Hello, friends, and thank you for tuning in to our broadcast today. In a few moments, we're going to take you into a live session where Bishop Wayne was teaching a message designed to feed your faith and to elevate your understanding. We invite you to join in as if you were here in person and to light up the chat box with your comments and confirmations. This hour of power is your time to recharge, to renew, and even to reset your mind for a life of purpose, passion, and power. At the end of this message, we have an important announcement for you. So do stay tuned. But now let's go into the hour of power with Bishop Wayne Malcolm.
So tonight's session is part 4 in our Kingdom Assignments series, and it is chosen for promotion, qualifying the cold. Chosen for promotion and qualifying the cold. Of course, you will have heard the saying, God does not call the qualified, he qualifies the called. So I'm going to talk about the process of qualification and how it is that God qualifies you after that he has called you, and why it's important for you to know that God qualifies who he calls, rather than thinking that he's looking for those who are qualified, because if you think that, then you will exclude yourself from the arena of greatness, and you will disqualify yourself, and you'll say no to God because you'll think, well, I'm not qualified. And the reality is that God's not looking for the qualified. He is looking for other features and characteristics, and then once he calls you, he will qualify you. So I want to deal with the process by which God qualifies the called. And so in tonight's session, I'm going to kick off with some quotes and context. I'm going to give a quote and some context. I want to talk about succeeding against the odds, when the odds are stacked against you. I want to talk about the difference between... Actually, I don't want to give you too much notice about that. You're going to spot the difference. I'm going to talk about amphibious believers, attractive features, promotion by favor, and promotion by fire. Woo! Somebody shout your yes in the chat box. Woo! So, great lineup. I try to keep these sessions down to half an hour. It never ever works, so maybe about 45 minutes, and let us go. So here's the quote: God does not call the qualified, he qualifies the called. One more time: God does not call the qualified, he qualifies the called. In other words, the calling comes first, the qualifications come after. And why it's important for you to know that is so that you don't end up talking yourself out of the top job. Talking yourself out of the top job. And I guess sometimes when an opportunity presents itself, we become our own worst enemy and proceed to talk ourselves out of the opportunity. We start looking at ourselves, and we start looking at our experience and our education and our capacity, and we look at all of these things and end up talking ourselves out of the top job. I don't want you to talk yourself out of the top job. I don't want you to talk yourself out of God's purpose and plan for your life. And I want to encourage you tonight to realize that the calling precedes the qualification, that God does not call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And if God has called you to a position, to a role, to a function, to an office, if God has called you, then he is going to equip you, he's going to educate you, he's going to give you the experience that you need, he's going to qualify you, he's going to bless you with qualities and gifts and graces and endowments that make you the absolute best person for the job. Can someone say amen? All right. So let's do a reading around this. Let's do a reading, and I'm reading from Daniel chapter 1. Daniel chapter 1, and we're going to read verses 3 and 4. And it reads, "And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. All right, so what we're actually looking at here in this opening chapter of Daniel is the opportunity that was extended to some of the children of Israel to occupy an office within the king's palace. So effectively, the king, certainly King Nebuchadnezzar, his style, once he took people into captivity, was to identify their gifts and talents, employ them, and use them in his service. And he has instructed the master of his eunuchs to bring certain of the children of Israel who had certain characteristics, and we'll go through those characteristics in detail a bit later on. And he said, I want you to look out for people that have these characteristics, and then we're going to teach them the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. Another translation would say we'll teach them the culture and the literature, the culture and the literature, the learning and the language of the Chaldeans. So we'll teach them afterwards, so long as there are some base qualities and characteristics about them. And of course the those that were chosen, there were four that were chosen. They are Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they met the initial criteria. They were chosen for promotion. And then they went through a period of qualification, preparation, education, learning, so that they could stand in the king's palace. And this is a very powerful principle, and it definitely speaks volumes to those of us who are called to the marketplace, and those of us who are called to impact industries, and those of us who are called to become God's agency, God's advocate, God's advertisement, and God's access to market sectors and spheres of social influence and industries and institutions. Basically your working professional life. If there's a calling of God upon your working life, then this principle is super relevant for you. And so we're really going to talk about I guess some of the base qualities, and then the process of qualification and preparation for your next promotion. By the way, how many of you believe that your next promotion is imminent? It's imminent. Your next promotion is imminent. In fact, you are probably on the brink of a breakthrough right now. God has opened the door before you that no man can shut. And yes, there are many adversaries, but because God is for you, no one and no thing can be against you. And you know that you're on the verge of victory and the brink of a breakthrough. I want you to shout your amen, your yes, your whatever in the chat box. And if you were with me in person, I guess you'd do something like this. All right, so I want to talk about the fact that these four Hebrew boys were promoted against all the odds. When I say against the odds, I mean that the odds were stacked against them. I mean that their promotion and their ultimate position was so unlikely. I mean, there is no way that you could look at these guys. There's no way you could look at these guys and say you are about to occupy an elite position in this pagan palace and in this Gentile world kingdom, you're going to become a powerful force within this great superpower, and that you're ultimately going to become a center of influence within this sphere of influence. There is no way that you could have looked at them and said this was going to happen, because their promotion happened against the odds. Now, why I need to tell you that it happened against the odds is because God, God does not change. He's immutable. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever, and what he's done for others, he'll do for you. I want you to know that God can promote you, God can position you, God can prosper you and protect you, even in an unlikely environment, a toxic environment, a difficult space, a challenging space. And you need to know that your next promotion is going to happen against the odds, because that is God's style. That's how Joseph got in the palace. That's how Esther got in the palace. That's how Nehemiah secured favor, and that's how Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were able to prosper. So I want us to look at the odds that were stacked against them. So number one, they were part of an ethnic minority. Okay, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were part of an ethnic minority. So they were not Chaldeans, they were not Babylonians, they were Jewish, they were Hebrews, and they had been brought into Babylon as slaves. They were children of the exile. And what this means is that once Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem, he took slaves, and he took people into captivity. And these people would have constituted a minority in Babylon. So that's the first odd that was stacked against them. Number two, they were part of a slave class. Because they were captured in battle, they were effectively slaves, and they had no rights. They had no rights. Now, how do you look at a minority of people who have no rights in a country and say one day you're going to occupy an elite position in that kingdom, and you're going to have power in the midst of this superpower, and you're going to become a center of influence within this sphere of influence? See, it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you finish. And God doesn't need your help in that respect. So that's number two. Number three, they were called to work in a toxic environment. They were called to work in a toxic environment. There could be nothing more toxic in the ancient world than a pagan palace. Pagan palaces were dedicated to pagan gods and deities. They were centers of witchcraft and debauchery and drunkenness and revelry, and they were the seat of power where wickedness prevailed. And so these people are working in the worst possible environment, a toxic environment. And I said that to say to some of you that are working in a toxic environment that God can still do it. Woo! God can still do it. You know what I'm hoping that moment was for someone? Yeah, a light bulb moment when you realize that God specializes in taking the nobodies and making them somebodies against all the odds. All right, number four, these people were surrounded by witches and wizards. Okay, all of the pagan kings took advice and counsel from necromancers, from stargazers, from wizards, and from witches. And so these four are surrounded by witches and wizards, and yet God still raised them up. Number five, these boys had deeply held convictions. We know that their convictions were very deep. In other words, just because they were in Babylon didn't make them Babylonians. All right? So you can be in it but not of it. Very important that you don't lose yourself in the pursuit of a career, a venture, or an opportunity, but that you carry your deeply held convictions with you. But these deeply held convictions constituted a professional disadvantage for them. And we kind of see this in chapter 1, where they refuse to eat the king's meat. Okay, if you read the whole story, they refused to eat the king's meat. That could have lost them the opportunity, and yet what seemed like a professional disadvantage became a spiritual advantage. Likewise, we know that the three Hebrew boys went to the fiery furnace because they would not bow to a graven image. And so this obviously made them a target. And likewise, we know that Daniel went to the lion's den because he wouldn't stop praying to Yahweh even after a decree, a law had been passed to say that no one should pray to any other god except the king for 30 days. So these four have carried deeply held convictions into this toxic environment, which typically works against you in the workplace. But because God is for you, then no one and no thing can be against you. So the deeply held convictions, although seeming like a professional disadvantage, because it definitely put them in the fiery furnace, put them in the lion's den, it became their spiritual advantage. All right, number 6, they were targets. They were the targets of jealousy and envy. Yep, jealousy and envy. I think I shared at one stage the difference between jealousy and envy, but let me say it again. When someone is jealous of you, it means that they want what you've got. When someone is envious of you, it means that they don't believe you deserve what you have. They believe that you've lied your way, you've stolen your way, you've done things to get to where you are. And so these 4 Hebrew boys were targets. And it's important for you to know that you cannot get to the top without being a target. You cannot get to the top without becoming the topic. Oh my gosh, that was... Yeah, you if you're interested in the top, then you have to be willing to become the topic and the target. So these boys were the topic, they were the target, they attracted jealousy and envy. And then number 7, finally, they were operating in a foreign country with a new language and customs. In other words, they had to learn the language. They had to learn new customs. They had to learn how to operate within the system. And so, that's called the odds are stacked against you. That's called it's highly unlikely that you're ever going to be a powerful, significant, influential person in this place. And yet, God raised them up and he made them the most significant, influential leaders and voices in that kingdom. And that's got to be good news for those of us who are called to the marketplace, to say, don't talk yourself out of the top job. If you ever find yourself talking yourself out of an opportunity, I want you to remember this slide. Just screen munch it and look at it whenever you find yourself talking yourself out of an opportunity and saying, the odds are stacked against me. The whole Bible is the story of little people achieving big things by the help of God. It's the story of weak people overcoming strong and mighty people by the help of God. It's the story of David versus Goliath, and David comes out with the victory. God specializes in the foolish things of the world, the base things of the world, the things that are despised, the things that are not, to bring to naught the things that are. I'm quoting really from the New Testament, from 1 Corinthians, that God has chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and base things, and the things that are despised and the things that are not, to bring to naught the things that are. Why? So that no flesh should glory in his presence. In other words, you're not going to get the credit for what God's about to do in your life. Woo! Oh my word! This is just rich. You're not going to be able to take the credit for where God is taking you. God is taking you to a place you could not have gone to without the help of God. God is positioning you in a palace that you couldn't have gotten to by yourself. And so we don't need to talk ourselves out of our next business breakthrough. We don't need to talk ourselves out of our next career acceleration. We don't need to talk ourselves out of our big opportunity, because this is God's style. And I want you to spot the difference between religious isolation and spiritual insulation. Because there is a difference between religious isolation and spiritual insulation. You see, the fact that these four boys were being positioned inside this pagan palace, this toxic environment against all the odds, meant that they had to be spiritually insulated. And there's a big difference between being spiritually insulated and being religiously isolated. The religious simply cannot stand in the king's palace. They cannot stand in the king's palace. Why? Because the king's palace will offend you. The king's palace will horrify you. The king's palace will terrify you. The king's palace will make you so uncomfortable that all you want to do is run for your life. Because religious people seek change through imposition. Imposition. And if you ever meet a religious person, what they're going to do is try to impose on you their way of life, their values, their beliefs, their convictions, their rules, their standards, and they impose them on you. So they're constantly telling you how you should live, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, how many sins you're constantly committing, how many sins everyone around you is committing. And this is called imposition. But because God had called these Hebrews to the marketplace or to the seat of government in a foreign pagan kingdom, they couldn't come in with that attitude.
Hey, I know that you are enjoying this presentation. I promise we'll get right back to it, but I needed to pause to ask you if you are aware of the Kingdom's University. And if you are not, please do click the link in the description beneath this video once you finish the presentation and take a look at all of the courses that we have put together that are designed to give you an advantage in life and in business. While you're looking at the courses, remember this, that your success in life will always be a reflection of your skills in life. So that if you want to become more successful, you simply have to become more skillful. You have to become very intentional about improving and upgrading your skills so that you get better at managing yourself, at managing your relationships. You get better commercially. You get better as a leader. You get better with finances. And so that's why we've put together this amazing collection of courses. And you wouldn't forgive me if I didn't pause to let you know about the plethora of courses that are available to you through the Kingdom's University. You know, I've discovered that the only people who are serious about success in life are the people who are equally serious about improving and upgrading their personal and professional skills. So this was a message to the serious, and I hope to see you on the other side. All right, let's get right back into the presentation.
They had to come in with a different attitude. And the attitude is about insulation, not isolation. All right? Insulation means that whatever the weather on the outside, it does not change the climate on the inside. Whatever the temperature on the outside does not affect the temperature on the inside. Because when God calls you to the marketplace, he is calling you to the arena of spiritual warfare, where there are principalities and powers, the rulers of the darkness and spiritual wickedness operating in high places. And you cannot go in there with a religious mindset that wants to impose stuff on people. Instead, you have to have a kingdom mindset, and the kingdom is increased and advanced through influence. Influence, not imposition, but influence. You must become influential in that system if you're going to change the system. And to be influential, you're going to have to be spiritually insulated. In other words, you know, the difference between religious isolation and spiritual insulation is that the religious are thermometers. They are thermometers. What I mean by thermometer, I mean they read the temperature. But spiritual people, kingdom people who are insulated, okay, these people are thermostats. Thermostats. And the difference between a thermometer and a thermostat is that a thermometer reads the temperature, but a thermostat sets the temperature. And so these Hebrews, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, They had something on the inside that could not be contaminated by anything on the outside. They had beliefs and convictions and values and a prayer life and a relationship with God that was never going to be contaminated by anything around them. And that's why they could work around witches and wizards, and they could work in this pagan environment, and they could work without losing themselves. And as a result, they became influential. So spot the difference. Woo! And the difference between religious isolation and spiritual insulation. And when you go and you start reading back through the book of Daniel, you're going to see this principle over and over again. Now, the second thing I want you to know about believers that God has called to the marketplace is that they are going to be amphibious. So what is an amphibian? An amphibian is a creature that can operate and live in two realms, in two worlds. They can live in the water and they can live on land. Okay? They are comfortable in water and they are comfortable on land. Most fish are only comfortable in the sea, but there are some creatures that can live in the sea and then crawl up on the land and live on the land. So believers who are called to the marketplace and anointed for industry, these people are amphibious in that they can operate in two worlds. They can operate comfortably in two worlds. They can operate seamlessly and naturally in two worlds. And this is another important feature that we see, and this is something that God develops in you once he has called you to the marketplace, is he's going to develop this dual nature. Now I want you to see it. It's a dual nature. Okay? Number one, all of these Hebrews had two names. They had dual identities. They had two names each, right? So we think of Daniel, and we call him Daniel, but in Babylon he was called Belteshazzar. We think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but that was their Babylonian names. Their Hebrew names were Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah. So they had this dual identity. They had a Hebrew identity, a Hebrew name. Daniel, Hanani, Mishael, Azariah. That's their Hebrew name. But then they had Babylonian names. Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And why was it important to have dual identity? It is because it is important that when you go into the boardroom, that actually you are an executive. All right, and this is a big mistake a lot of believers make. Is that your industry, your workplace, your marketplace is not your church. Okay? And so when you go in, you have to go in speaking the language of that industry and representing and identifying with that industry. And so that's why you have a dual identity. And so there are people who are on boards, okay, in their professional life, and on a Sunday you'll see their hands raised and tears streaming down their face as they sing a song of worship and praise to God. When they go to work, now they look very different and they sound very professional, and their presentation is to the best of the industry standards. Likewise, if you are in law and you are a barrister, when you put on those clothes, that's an identity. Okay, when you take off that uniform, then there's another identity. So the dual identity was a big part of what made it possible for these four Hebrews to excel in a toxic environment. Number two, they were bilingual. That means they spoke two languages. Okay, they spoke Hebrew and they learned Chaldean. And every industry has its own language. Very important for you to know that doctors speak a language, that people in finance speak a language, people in law speak a language, people in media speak a language, people in the public sector speak a language, people in the voluntary sector speak a language, and in whatever field, there are phrases, there are terms, there's a language that is used. And you've got to be able to speak the language of your industry, because your language actually is your license to operate in a domain. And so if you want to operate in a foreign territory, you must first learn the language. We kind of know this when it comes to geographic travel, that if you're going to try and set up a business in Brazil, you best learn Portuguese. If you're going to try and set up a business in France, best learn some French. Or if you're going to set up a business in a French-speaking country where the dominant language is French, then you best learn some French if you want license to operate in that domain. So this is why you need the language of the system you're called to, as well as your own Hebrew, your spiritual language, your faith-based language. But you don't bring your faith-based language into that environment because no one understands it there. Okay, no one understands it. So they were bilingual, and finally they had two roles. They each had two roles. Which means they had a job and they had their true work. And there's a difference between your job and your true work. Your job is what you're paid to do. Your true work is what you were made to do. I'm going to say that again. Your job is what you're paid to do. Your true work is what you were made to do. And so their job was to be a counselor and an advisor to the king. But their true work was to secure favor for the people in exile. And so they had two roles. They had two identities. They had two languages. They had two roles. They had two names. This is the amphibious believer, and this is the kind of person that God is putting in the palace. This is the kind of person that God is positioning in the marketplace. It's the kind of person whose career God is accelerating, and the kind of person to whom God is giving power. And you will see this exact same process in Joseph, that actually he had to learn the language of the Egyptians. He had to learn the culture of the Egyptians. His own brothers didn't even know that he was Joseph when they finally met him. And so he was operating as an amphibious believer who had his faith in God, his language with which he spoke to God, but he also had his professional persona and the language of the kingdom to which he had been assigned. Same is true of Esther, Nehemiah, all of them. So what were the attractive features? The attractive features are listed in our reading. Daniel 1 verses 3 and 4. They're actually listed. So here goes. Number one, they were of the king's seed. This means that they had to be members of the royal family. And the reason why they needed to be members of a royal family is because they would have high personal standards. And life in the palace wouldn't be so terribly confusing for them. And so it's very important that you have high personal standards. Okay, high personal standards. God's going to put you in a lofty place. Then you need to start from a place where your own personal standards are high. That you have a revelation of your own royalty. That you have a sense of being of the king's seed, of being part of a royal family, and as such, your standards are high. Woo! Number two, the Bible says they should be cunning in knowledge. Cunning in knowledge. It means demonstrating an advanced general knowledge and an understanding of the role. Okay, so it's very important that you're constantly expanding your general knowledge of your industry and your understanding of the role. When God puts you into a position, you need to commit to understanding its history, its structure, who it serves, how it serves, its core components. You want to understand more about that industry, that sector, that sphere you're in, and that role that you have. Number three, it says without blemish. Without blemish. Without blemish simply means they should be good looking. They should be good looking, they should be fit, and they should possess an attractive personality. Now, of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But when we look at the spiritual implications of being without blemish, it really means that your personality is pure. You are genuinely, authentically a nice person, a good person to work with, a great team player. You know, when we look at you from a professional point of view, that's what makes you without blemish. There is a certain purity, a certain authenticity, a certain warmth, and an attractive personality. All right, number 4, understanding science. Understanding science. What this means is that they understood how and why things work, because the science of a thing is the how behind the happening. And so these people actually understand why it's important to do this before you do that, because this has an impact on that. And if we don't get that right, then the whole thing is compromised. Those are people who think in a particular way that is almost scientific. Understanding science, that's a whole seminar by itself. Number 5, skillful in wisdom. Skillful in wisdom. And so this really has to do with their intelligences, their emotional, social, and technical intelligences, because that's where your wisdom, your skill in wisdom is seen. Your skill in wisdom is seen in your emotional intelligence, your social or relational intelligence, and your technical intelligences. That's where we see your skill in wisdom. And number 5, it says ability to stand in the king's palace. What this means is these people are thick-skinned. What I mean by thick-skinned, if your skin is too thin, then any little thing is going to penetrate you and get into you in ways that it doesn't get into others. You have to have a thick skin. Remember, if you're going to be at the top, you're going to be the topic and the target. And so you're going to have to learn quickly how to handle criticism, how to handle rejection, how to handle sabotage, betrayal, how to handle haters, and those people that are trolls. If you have to have the ability to operate at the top. And so there's a final one, number 7. It says that they should learn the culture and the language of the Chaldeans. This means that they would be teachable. Oh my gosh, y'all didn't hear that. Teachable. That is actually a light bulb moment. Teachable is the fundamental, non-negotiable, absolute prerequisite for your next promotion. You have to be able to learn the culture, learn the language. This means you're teachable, you're curious, and you're non-judgmental. Wow, these are attractive features. What are these things? They are attractive features. Let me get back. This makes you attractive and even magnetic in the marketplace. These 7 features by themselves make you attractive and magnetic in the marketplace. Now, let's look at favor, okay? Because favor occurs when God informs the beliefs and opinions of key people about you, so that they see in you what other people cannot see and what sometimes you cannot see in yourself. Wow, favor works by perception. So promotion by favor comes from attractive and compelling features. See, if you develop these features, you are going to attract favor. Okay? You're going to attract favor in that people are going to see these qualities in you before key people will see these qualities in you before others do. See, Ashpenaz was the master of the eunuchs, and it was his job to go out and look for qualities in people. Look for qualities in people. Of course, they don't know the job. Of course, they don't understand the role. Of course, they don't know the language. But we can teach them that if they're teachable. So let's look for qualities in people. And in the marketplace, these qualities in you, they make your personality attractive, and they attract favor, so that key people will open doors for you that no one can shut, so that you get invitations into arenas of greatness, so that you get opportunities that normally take years and years of experience and trial and error for the average person to get. You have been chosen for the promotion because there are qualities, and there's an Ashpenaz in every industry. There's an Ashpenaz in the spiritual realm looking for qualities for the next generation of leaders and influencers and decision makers and power brokers. These qualities will bring you promotion by favor. But now I want to talk about promotion by fire, because promotion does happen by favor, but there's also a level of promotion that will only ever happen by fire. Because once favor has positioned you, once favor has opened a door for you that no man can shut, you're going to become the topic and the target. What? Yes, you are. The topic and the target. Because favor is going to put you in a place that will attract jealousy and envy. The jealous are going to say that I always wanted that position. I don't know how he got it. I don't know how she got it, because I wanted it. I've been working for it. I've been struggling for it. I've been doing all this, and yet this person got it. And what you're seeing here is favor making you the topic and the target. Is there anybody here who actually knows what I'm talking about? Has anyone ever been there before, where favor opened the door for you and made you the topic and the target of the jealousy and envy of others? Now, you attract jealousy, you also attract envy. And this is why your next promotion, your highest promotion, is always going to be a promotion by fire. So what do I mean by promotion by fire? So you see the picture, you can see the three Hebrews in the fire, and you see a fourth man in the fire. And that's the story as you read it through. There's a fourth man that appeared in the fire. That is the Lord himself, who will stand with you in the fire. See, that's the promise. That's the hope. That's the promise. That's what should comfort you, is knowing that whatever fire favor puts you in, there will be a fourth man in the fire. Christ will not leave you in the fire. He will be present with you in that fire. And because he's present with you in the fire, you will not be burned. Woo! I said you will not be burned. Now, the promotion by fire. Let's go through this 1, 2, 3. 1. Promotion by fire happens when you first stand up. You stand up. See, what happened was the king said, everyone needs to bow down to this image, this statue of me. And when the music plays, everyone needs to bow down. And the three Hebrews said, we will not bow. We will not bow. And so they stood up for something. They stood for something. And if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything and everything. So you got to have something at some point in your career life. You're going to be challenged to stand up for something that you deeply believe, that is a core conviction with you. And you stand up. The problem is that when you stand up, you stand out. You stand out. And once you stand out, then you become the topic and you become the target. You stood out. You're now the topic that we're talking about at the dinner table, that we're talking about in the toilets, that we're talking about at lunch break. You're the topic and you're the target, and you're standing out because you're standing up. So number 3, you're going to have to stand firm, because you may be cast into the fire of criticism, the fire of allegation, the fire of hate, the fire of being excluded, of being ostracized, of being picked on and picked at and bullied, and you're gonna be cast into the fire. You know why? Because you're standing up and you're standing out. But you must stand firm, and you stand firm in the knowledge that you will never be alone in that fire, and that if you can withstand the fire, when you come out of the fire, you're not coming out on the same level that you went into the fire. I wish I had some help right now. You are not coming out of the fire on the same level that you went in, because that fire kills every normal person that goes into it, but it's not going to kill you. It burns others, but it hasn't burned you. And so you come out on another level, and that's your ultimate level, where you've been tried and tested and purged and purified. You come out on another level. You're now at the top of your game. Everyone that criticized, everyone that hated, everyone that tried to pull you down, they're going to have to run like cockroaches and scatter like a light just came on in the room. They're going to have to disappear, because you have stood firm and you stood the test of fire. You've been promoted by favor, and now you are promoted by fire.
Hey, it's the Business Bishop, and I know that you enjoyed that presentation and that it blessed you and is blessing you right now. In the midst of the presentation, I paused to let you know about the Kingdoms University and about the plethora of courses that we have put together designed to help you upgrade and improve your personal and professional skills so that you can enjoy more and more success. Like we said, the only people that are really serious about success are the people who are equally serious about improving and upgrading their personal skills. I really want you to click the link in the description to at least take a look at the courses, because you'll discover that we've got personal development courses, professional development courses, and business development courses, and they have been put together from a kingdom perspective to bless you, to empower you to be, do, have all that you were designed and destined to be, do, and have. So please do yourself a favor, click the link in the description under Kingdoms University. Check out what we've made available just for you. All right, don't go before you watch the rest of these ads. Peace.
Hey there, entrepreneurs. If you enjoy the teachings of Bishop Wayne Malcolm, I've got something amazing for you. Introducing the New Breed Community, an exclusive online platform for kingdom-conscious entrepreneurs, professionals, investors, and creators. This isn't just a community, it's a movement where we discuss and explore kingdom concepts. Here, kingdom-minded people connect, share, learn, and grow together. Inside, you'll find exclusive content from Bishop Wayne Malcolm, including special sessions just for members. And the best part? It's free to join. The New Breed Community sits on the Heartbeat platform, where Bishop Wayne Malcolm is excited to meet you online. Join us for weekly Q&A sessions with Bishop Wayne and get exclusive insights that can transform your life. Love to read? Join our book club to feed your mind and spirit. Got a prayer request? Post it and let's lift each other up. Have a testimony? Share how God's goodness is shining in your life. We're more than just a community, we're a movement. Discover the powerful relationship between your profession and your purpose. Join us now on the Heartbeat platform. Connect with us and let's grow together. Bishop Wayne Malcolm and the New Breed Community are waiting for you. So what are you waiting for? Hit that join button and step into a world of connection and growth. A warm welcome awaits you. See you on the inside.